So, Mr. Alex Mann, how are you?
I'm fantastic, man. Nice. It's finally the spring mirage is past us now in New York, and it's looking
Mhm.
like it might finally be not freezing cold 3 months into the year.
Bro, it's March. It's gonna be bad until May. You'll have nice days and then it'll get freezing cold again. Or then it'll be really bright, but it'll be freezing cold. And then you'll get a nice day. And then around end of April, beginning of May, it'll start to even out.
How's everything in the East Bay of California?
Things are going well. The weather's starting to get a little bit warmer and nicer. The days are starting to get a little bit longer. We're almost out of this deep freeze that we've been in,
Yeah, you're
which is,
50 degrees. Deep freeze.
basically September in New York. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, jealous, jealous. But what I do want to compliment is your hoodie.
In regards to our last conversation, I
Yes.
decided to wear the fast hoodie.
And it's great that that's almost like you wearing it is like Larry David and his Spite store, the Spite coffee store. It's like,
I'm the anti Don Hollum. I really am.
yeah,
I over prepared, uh, and I'm trying to come in the best way that I can. I'll tell you, I've been really diving deep into building the talent grind community. Like some of the stats I'm starting to see, it's insane. Like 13,000% growth.
that's insane
I can
too.
walk you through the numbers. In relation to other industry influencers, like I'm growing by 7,000%, where they're growing by maybe 5 to 20% month over month. And I'm starting to talk to a lot more people. I think people are starting to resonate with them that we are here to give free knowledge away, as well as free resources and access to more reasonably priced resources such as LA.ai. I'm getting more people talking to me and responding. Alex, I'm still hearing a lot of fear out there.
Oh man, it is a fear from a recruiter perspective or fear from the candidate perspective, because I think they're kind of
Both.
like in this equilibrium at the moment, and it's very fascinating you say that.
I'll say this, if you're a recruiter and you've been working for the last 3 or 4 years, you are extremely fortunate. You ought to be thanking your lucky stars.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who has been working in tech or any sort of white collar role, especially over the last 18 months to two
Yeah,
years, I feel
yeah.
like there's just been like an existential shift in job security, just it's in the eradication of job security.
People are wondering whether they should be leaving the profession. And then I'm starting to see different puzzle pieces coming together because obviously everybody's seeing the same thing, right?
Yeah,
And we were all hoping that the economy was going to come back, but Trump is playing his reindeer games with tariffs, and that's just I think making people uneasy. And then the Atlantic came out with an article
yes.
proclaiming that the period we're in now is equal to the Great Recession, and they're calling it the Big Freeze.
I was reading the article when you sent it to me, and I found it fascinating that they mentioned the pace of hiring is slowed to levels last seen after the Great Recession. But I don't understand why that's not front page news. Like, that is extraordinary. Do we forget how bad it was in 2009? Like, it was insane. And I look at this and I go, whoa, we're at that same pace. I was reading somewhere that was like all these job losses that have happened, like the firings that have happened. It's like there's going to be even more people in market for roles now. Like, so we think it's
Yeah.
competitive today. There's another 250,000 people coming into the job market starting like when we see the February results at the beginning of March, what that'll mean for like people competing. What does that mean for recruiters? What does that mean for the way you source candidates? 250,000 government professionals now out there.
Absolutely right. Just some high points on this, talking about how many applications everybody's been filling out. I can certainly understand that. And just in general, the percentage of workers voluntarily quitting their jobs has fallen by a third from its peak. Employees are staying put, which is smart. If you quit your job to pursue your passion project in the last year, probably not the best things. And it really seems to be affecting the white collar industry the most.
Yeah, you could sense that anecdotally. From my perspective, I think we can feel that. It almost feels validating to read that, like, okay, I'm not the
Yeah.
only one who's clearly thinking this. We can see it. And there's data. Like, there's a great line in that article. Employees are staying put and employers are searching for new ones. Do you know what it reminded me of reading this article? When you sent this to me yesterday, I was reminded of myself when I left a really good company, Mission Lane. I left it for ambition, but I could have stayed. There was nothing wrong with the job, great benefits, great perks, whatever. And now it's like the opposite. Like, would I leave a job now? Rather, would I rather be pushed out or like left out than like actually leave? I can't imagine there's people out there that are like, to what you're saying earlier, like pursuing passions. Who are the people out there that can like go off and leave a job and pursue passions? It's like wild.
People who've worked at FAANG companies for the last 10 years and have a lot of
Yeah,
savings.
but also it's very difficult to give up those benefits. They're kind of stuck in that cycle of fear, like golden handcuffs. If you're a Google or Meta, giving up that level of wealth to open the Pilates studio you've always dreamed of. I don't know if today's the time. Everything just feels kind of off in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And clearly what's happening here is that AI is such an instrumental change in the way that businesses operate that it's taking more time for businesses to figure out how to properly integrate it into their operations and what they really need. So what I see trending is more and more businesses continuing to cut deeper and overloading the people internally, having them work with AI, figuring out the new status quo, and they'll start filling the holes and begin hiring again. The only thing we don't know is how long that process is going to take. And I would say that in the past, that might have taken a long time. But when you're talking about Salesforce really pushing the agentic AI, people are starting to really talk more about
Yeah.
agentic AI. There's another recruiter out there who's building a business. He says that he's building technology. I guess we'll see what he builds, but he's building agentic AI that's going to do all these crazy things, and to the point where it's going to replace recruiters. And I really feel that's looking at it from a half glass full perspective.
Yeah. Like replacing recruiters, I think is an extreme piece of speculation. I think what we're seeing is a hollowing out of entry level roles in businesses. And I think like if you wanted to become a recruiter, I'd say it's the worst time to do that.
I would not be entering the
Yeah.
field right now.
I think that
No,
goes for sales and marketing as well. I think it's like for a
mm,
lot of roles in businesses, look at engineering hiring. And I think what the AI is doing is like, okay, we can automate some of these tasks that entry level folks would have traditionally been paid to do. Like that's how they earn their stripes. But it's putting more of a
right.
burden on the middle management, the managerial class within these companies to actually activate a lot of these AI automations. And we don't really know how that's going to pay off for any kind of business because people are only scratching the surface with a lot of AI tools. And I guess we're probably, I would say, years away from a recalibration of the labor market in terms of like how new jobs, new roles will be invented and how new intakes of people are going to find their way into like a company. I'll give you a good example. Do you know what a J1 visa is? The J1 is you're in the Bay Area. So if you ever see Irish people in the Bay Area that are young, they're typically on a J1 visa.
Mhm.
J is like your student cultural visa, but it can go on for
Okay.
a year. You'll see huge influxes of people from all over the world post university. You qualify for this visa, you come over and you can work in the United States for a year. That come to me because I'm like, I'm Irish and I'm like, oh, you're a point person. You work in tech. Like, let me talk to you. They're all finding me on LinkedIn. And I'll chat with them because I'm like, it's great. If you want to talk to me, we'll get a coffee and I'll talk to you for 45 minutes. But one of the things that fascinates me is like, it is like nearly impossible for any of them to get work. Like nearly impossible. And these are like
Mm,
college grads. These are like people who are like go-getters. They can have master's degrees. Like they're 23 years old and they're like, want to hit the like pound pavements. It's like not even able to get a look in. And I'm like, would I hire these kinds of people? The tasks that I would have hired them for have been automated away. So I think like there's a recalibration of like like where are we in this process? Because AI is just stripping out a lot of what used to have been done by humans in that space. It'll invent new jobs, but what are they? Who's going to wait for that?
I absolutely agree with you. So if you're suffering right now, it's because we're in the foam and everything. And when you're in the foam, like I boogie board with my sons in Southern California sometimes. And if you hit the wave wrong, it can go horribly wrong. Like I've been on a 6 foot wave and looked down and seen the beach and I'm out in the ocean. Sometimes when you get caught up in a wave, you're in the foam and you can't tell what's up and what's down.
Yeah.
Right. And you're supposed to look at the bubbles, and the bubbles will tell you what direction is up. And so I feel like economically we're in the foam right now.
Yeah.
I will say that I'm very glad I've been building for the last 4 years. My partner is really diving deep into
Yeah.
NAN and building some automation for us. It's incredible what you can do. I said, well, are we going to need someone to clean data for us? And he's like, no. Then someone sent me an email and volunteered to do some data science interning with us. And I sent it to him and he sent me back this link to a video by a woman. And then she's asking, oh, I can get that done in 2 weeks. Oh, you want me to work with intern? It'll be 4 weeks. It's this video short that's been going
Yeah.
around. I don't need anybody. I just need to work. And so there's incredible opportunity. I mean, taking a look at Cursor being one of the fastest
Insane.
growing businesses ever. I just think if you're senior and you know what's wrong and broken in your industry, and you can figure out how to fix that through automation or software, you should do that on the side, right?
I think like if you're a recruiter and you're looking for like you've got an influx of like a pipeline, surely one of the number one like criteria you need to screen for is AI curiosity. Like what are you
Yeah.
doing in AI? Because
Oh, I've added that to my interview
yeah,
questions. How are you using AI both personally and professionally?
nobody really knows how to do it. So if you're curious at it, there's a huge unlock, not just for the business, but for you professionally as well to come in and be like a strategic leader in that organization. But like, if you're coming in and you don't know how to use an AI tool appropriately, like, I mean, there's plenty of other people out
My
there,
my my
you know?
my my cloud project for talent grind is already 45% full
Wow.
with data because I'm constantly working in it. Everything that I just do my posts look like AI created. They
To
are.
be fair, I thought
I'm
your email
smart.
last week was really good. I mean, like, do you write it?
Well, I edit.
Yeah.
It's about working with AI. I sometimes wonder because it's obvious when something's been written with AI because of the way it
Yeah.
structures it and
All the
like the
hyphens.
highlights and stuff. I'm kind of inclined to go back to long form, but ultimately that format's easier for someone to quickly read and digest than just a giant block of text like we see in this Atlantic article, which is more of the traditional way of
Yeah,
writing,
like a human.
right? Sentences and paragraphs, but the AI puts a lot of white space in. It breaks down to their simplest elements. It gives you what you need to know really quickly,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, and this is the thing. I mean, like, I'm just I reading that Atlantic article, which will be in the notes of this episode, I just found the whole article very disconcerting. Seeing what would be considered primo white collar jobs, consulting, finance, high paying jobs, back to recession levels. Like the only thing that could possibly have done that, like we can speculate, but it's quite obvious that it's an AI recalibration. I couldn't account for it any other way. How could somebody like McKinsey or Accenture, like what, a third of their business is now AI related? Such it's like of all their revenue is coming from AI.
Look, McKinsey made their own LLM and just cut
I mean, and
just
more
take
power to the
out
business that
people.
does that. Like, it just sucks for people who are in that position. More power to them to make a product like that.
Let me read this final
Read it.
paragraph for everybody. Just according to economists and executives, the labor market won't thaw until employers feel confident enough about the future to begin hiring at a more normal pace. Businesses hoped that such a moment would arrive in early 2025, with inflation defeated and the election decided. Instead, the early weeks of Donald Trump's presidency have featured the looming threat of tariffs and trade wars, higher than expected inflation, rising bond yields, and a chaotic assault on federal programs. Corporate America is less sure about the future than ever, and the economy is still frozen in place. So all I have to say about that is thanks,
Oh
John.
my God, that paragraph is not pleasant reading, isn't it? Like, politics aside, business thrives on consistency. It doesn't want to be shocked. And we're being shocked, and there's a complete inconsistency in message and tone and what's happening around us. And confidence is just so ethereal. And when you have a good confidence, everyone feels a good vibe. It just feels like the oxygen is very much sucked out of confidence at the moment. Up to that election, confidence was zapped anyway. So it's like, okay, are we now legitimately coming into like a recession? I mean, like, I'm no economist, but like inflation ain't going away. I honestly think that the jobs report in March will be a trigger for a lot of reaction. I think when people see that hundreds of thousands of more people are unemployed overnight, and for what? I think we'll see probably a reaction to the noise that we have found ourselves in. We don't need this level of chaos. I think that jobs report will be pretty seismic because, like, I'm stunned by the amount of people that are now back on the market. That would worry some because there's already so many people on the market. We have hundreds of people applying for jobs at any given time. Like, I guess this kind of parlays into like, this is great for AI because it's and I think for like recruitment SaaS AI in particular, because there's going to have to be a sea change in how candidates are triaged if there's so many people looking for work. If you think about your top of funnel, Michael, like you're posting a job, hundreds of people are already applying. Someone's going to have to sift through a lot of those resumes. Someone's going to have to do a lot of those entry screening calls. So, like, what is the criteria? What's the barrier? What's the thing that gets people into the room in the first place? If there's more and more people unemployed, how are we going to be able to triage that?
Alex, there's only one way out of this, and it's what I've been doing for the last 18 months.
Being entrepreneur.
It's building relationships. That the client server internet cloud reach out to everybody in the world and spam them with email era is over.
1,000%.
It's over. So I was in Notion. Now we're using
You were saying that
AppFlow.
last time, yeah?
Uh, I've got my own server. I've built the knowledge base for Talent Grind. I did my first video for it for training yesterday, walking people through how to use the Team Source platform to start doing all their outreach and engagement. And it's really funny. Everything that's happening here, I'm a little bit older and I read a lot and I think a lot. And when I make decisions, I try to make the best decision possible. I saw that SaaS was going to get commodified. I saw that data was going to become more valuable. And I saw that ultimately people would be better served instead of doing a contract with one company to work with multiple companies. And to your point now, I think we're getting to the point where people need to start thinking about how they're doing business and how they're selling themselves. If you're senior and you feel like nobody's going to hire you, then it's time to reinvent yourself.
Yeah. I think reinvention is super important. To your point, you wouldn't recommend people get into the industry now. But if you're here, you have to reinvent yourself. Recruiters should be taking this extremely seriously. Like, this is very
Yeah.
existential, especially if you're like not the A plus 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 in your business today. That's like the guy or the person. Like, you got to be all about like getting yourself to be the absolute expert.
There's people out there studying marketing and recruiting who've worked for some company in Kansas and have got 60,000 followers on LinkedIn, and you work for FANG companies and you've got eight. Like, it's time to turn that around.
That is such a great quote. Can that be the name of the episode maybe or something? Or the name of the day? That should be the headline. 1,000% light bulb. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, here I am, quote unquote, marketing guy, marketing inverted commas expert. What am I going to say? I've only got 6,000 followers on LinkedIn. I guess I could turn that around in 3 months and be like 18,000, 28,000, probably in a couple of months, probably easily. But it's like, the tools are there. Like, I know exactly what I should be posting. I know exactly the kind of content I should be creating. Literally, the playbooks are everywhere for people to do this. But like, I guess,
The tools have never been easier, but you need to have a point of
yeah, like, and it's not hard to have a point of view because it's your own personal point of view. It's your own perspective. Whether it's right or wrong, who cares? I mean, that's the whole point of building the brand. Like, this is what you stand for. I never thought about it that way before, where you've got recruiters in Kansas that are like 60,000 followers on LinkedIn and somebody works at FANG. Job that people would kill for. It's almost like not taking the extraordinary, it's like Rome burning and you're playing the fiddle almost. What are you going to do? You can, if something happened to you and you're in a FANG and you were let go. One of the things that I always think about, I'm curious your take on this. Hiring people from FANG businesses is almost like a no-go if you're at a startup.
it depends on we worked at Google from 2006 to 2014. I mean, I worked at Google in 2013, and even then it was starting to not be the Google of old. Like, it's going back to the Google of old right now. I don't know if you've heard, but Sergey is in with the AGI team
Yeah.
and he's asking people to be in the office all the time. And he's personally getting involved in leading, which good for him.
Well, that's the thing. That's a question of leadership, obviously, isn't it? Like,
I just talked to my partner before this live
not a
stream.
web.
He's been messing around with N8N for over a month and a half now and still not finished. And I'm like, listen, bro, I need you to work on our
Listen,
platform.
bro.
You can throw yourself into our platform. Like, I'm throwing myself into creating content and we'll see what happens. He'll do it. But it's at an inflection point, right? If you're early in your career, you're going to have easier chance getting a job because you're looking for less money. So try to get into the best company that you can get into, right? If you're later career and you're not getting any jobs, you've got to do what you got to do to pay the bills, but you need to start seriously considering using all these tools and creating your own content and getting your voice out there. It is the only way to get a signal to the noise. And you don't know what's going to happen until you put yourself out there. I understand how scary it is. That's why I think I didn't do it for long. One, because it's a full-time job to do it. And two, you're putting yourself out there. You stand to be rejected. And nobody wants to be rejected.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that, this is the thing. We've spoken about this before. You have to get over the hump of the fact that, like, yeah, you're going to sound cringy. I always say that there was a great quote from Mr. Beast, and you might be like, well, how could I be referencing Mr. Beast on a recruiting live stream on Restream through LinkedIn? And I'm like, Mr. Beast will say that, like, to even get even a semblance of traffic on a YouTube channel, you need to do like 100 episodes, like 100 posts. When I started
Oh,
my podcast, it took me literally 99 episodes to, like, I got a text from somebody saying that was the best and worst episode you've ever done. And I was like, oh,
oh,
wow, somebody actually was listening to this. Like, no one was interested in the con. And I was like, okay. And then I started checking the analytics and I was like, huh, there's like a couple thousand streams here. I was like, cool, who are these people?
you didn't even look at analytics? I'm obsessed over them. I go over
Right?
them
Yeah, it's
multiple
interesting.
times.
I looked at it as like my kind of ideology for like the podcast stuff. I looked at it like a Thanksgiving turkey. It is a big production to create that one piece of content, but most people are eating Thanksgiving for like the sides and the leftovers. That's where the real joy comes from. I was more interested in like what's it doing on Reels, TikTok, especially on LinkedIn. If I can create good content, turn the podcast into clips, LinkedIn's a honeypot. You're getting 20 likes. And then 5 weeks later, you're getting 30 likes. And then 6 more weeks later, you're getting 50 likes. You're building up something that's there. That was the data I
Yeah.
was looking at. Not the fact that like 90% of people who started a podcast finished it. I was like, what? Like that blew my
Yeah.
mind that people would do that. When it comes to creating personal brand or personal content, it's very much a mind over matter. You can get discouraged if you do 3 episodes and you're like, oh, nobody's going to listen to it for a long time. But someday it will hit. And the data is there. Like the aggregate data, when people say like, how many podcasts get to 10 episodes? 0.1% get to 10 episodes. You can get to 10
I can see
episodes,
that.
you're in a field of your own. That's why they're like, keep going because you'll find an audience eventually.
So this is the unfortunate reality,
Yeah.
right? We're now living in the future. You have AI, you have access to all these tools. A new component of a career is a personal brand identity.
1,000%. Like I would say stress this for everyone, like no matter what job you're in, but for recruiters and people in a position like this, it's
Absolutely
like,
critical.
how could you not? Everybody's competing for the same person. Everyone's out there looking for candidates to place in jobs. Everyone's
Yeah.
looking for companies to hire them. It's like there's a lot of you and not a lot of either of those. So like it's very much a case of why would somebody pick you over somebody else? And I think like personal brand having that. It's like, you know what they said? There are roles in Hollywood now are not down to your ability as much as they're down to your social media influence to be picked for roles in films. And it's kind of like the same now for regular jobs. If I had 2 people applying for a marketing job and more than 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, I'd be like, fuck yeah, get this guy in here. I'm like, how do we leverage this?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, of course, it's a no brainer. And it's
Yeah.
like we said, it's just a question of perseverance and really putting your point of view out.
The good news is that we're at the very beginning of it. So you've got no excuse.
You're also not late.
You're not late. Use AI to create material. Use AI to create a strategy. Let AI know which channels you want to use. Like I'm still not doing everything. I just realized like I'm writing on Substack, but I'm not putting posts pointing to my Substack on LinkedIn. And Substack gives me even these great little images that I can use and post to LinkedIn and other places that will direct right back to Substack.
I mean, exactly. No brainer.
I haven't even incorporated that yet. I've got to add that as part of my process, probably with this show. And Substack will break down and give you AI generated short clips now for free.
Did you see that Opus clip has raised like 200 million or the valuation is 200 million from like SoftBank? Like, and the fact that you can get this for free from the software you're using from Substack.
From where we're streaming this in is trying to charge me money, and their AI clips are cool. And it gave a virality score and it gave an editor. But in reality, what I've learned is I can take the clip from Substack, just upload it to YouTube, and I can edit YouTube if I need to. And
Right.
it's super easy. Like everything works with each other now.
Yeah. I was very impressed with your last email, by the way, the amount of content that came out after it. I have to say, I was like, yeah, Michael, very good. You know, it's very true because the payoff is knowing that you're able to produce in the first place. You're learning how to drive a manual car. When you put in your foot in the clutch and it cuts out the first time. And then eventually it just becomes a norm for you. Just like go to the gym and you're like, first time you ever squat the barbell, you're like, your hamstrings are on fire and you're like, I'm never going back. and then eventually it gets kind of better. I think it's the same for this, like to create the personal brand, to be able to make a point of view that you are a recruiter that is trustworthy, that is opinionated, that has a strong point of view, that delivers results. All of those things are very doable to do. You just have to like, you're like, I mean, like what you were saying, Michael, just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to build a personal brand for myself across LinkedIn and TikTok. Here are the areas of my expertise that I'm very strong in. How do you think I should even start?
Yeah, what I don't do enough, I should do more, is actually asking the AI to create a prompt for me that I can use with AI to get the most out of what I need. And
Sweet,
so if
great.
you're brand new to even working with AI, just say, "Hey, I'm new to working with AI. Can you create a prompt for me that will give me what I want?" It will then create the prompt and you copy it, put it back into AI with your specifics, and then it will give you what you want. And you can do
Yeah.
that in like less than a minute.
Exactly. I mean,
And so
that's great advice, by the way.
yeah, it's true. So we're in the foam of AI. The job market is frozen, but AI makes everything so much faster. So we should be getting to the point where this recession is over faster.
I mean, that's great advice, by the way. Like, that should be packaged in your email that you send out. Like, that I'm inspired by that. I'm actually going to do that now after this.
And
Well,
you should do it because the AI will give you the best prompt to use with the AI to get what you want out of it. It's an
I
extra 15-second
totally,
step.
totally. And like, it's one of those ones I'm like, when we think about it, there is a very difficult job market now. It's going to get even more difficult in the
Yeah.
next 6 to 8 weeks. Like, I can't see it in any other way. So, what's the alternative? Just getting to work on yourself, getting to know AI,
Yeah.
getting to build that brand, and they are interrelated.
Don't be lazy right now.
Not the time. And I don't
Not
want
the
to be like,
time.
but I do want to say, like, in the sense that, like, I would never want to call somebody lazy who doesn't do that. But I'm like, yes, like, if there was a time to like get up and go, I would say it's yesterday. And I love that your dog got up on the couch there, by the way, as well. Yeah. Is that what you were leaning over
Yeah,
for? I
that's
love
where I
that.
was leaning over to let everybody see
Is
Will.
that, is your Dalmatian?
It's a Bernedoodle.
Oh,
Half
nice.
Burmese mountain dog, half doodle, and all Bay Area.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's probably
The most Bay Area dog.
everyone has a cross of some type of doodle in the Bay Area. There's
This is
this
my story about how I found out about the Bernedoodle. I met a VC on a gondola at Heavenly. She invited me to come talk to her in her office in San Francisco. The next week, I went in and met with her in her office. I met my first Bernedoodle, and it was the most mellow dog I'd ever met. I'm like, I have to get this dog. It's beautiful and it's mellow. But
love
ours
first sighting.
ours is more poodle than Burmese mountain dog, so it's kinda psycho, unfortunately. But she's
Very
really
good.
cute. But she's
Very
really
good.
back to our subject. Yeah, I just think it's really never been, more to find good people to follow and learn from. I would recommend Kevin Lee. He runs a marketing company called Bonfire. I worked with him at Oyster. I built a marketing team with him at Oyster in the early days. And he puts out really quality, a lot of frameworks, a lot of practical, solid advice. Simone Schiazzi, ex Google director, continues to put out incredible content around
That's
leadership and management, and also just how to develop your career internally. Like these are the golden Google nuggets, people. I read every single one of his posts. I was in shell shock in 2023 and in 2024. I went into periods of depression. I had some rough times, and I'm forcing myself out of it. And if I can do it, I think anybody can do it, right? We just all have to realize that, like, there's a lot of opportunity to create professional brands around what you know. Take a look at who your competitors are and see if they're honestly as good as you are. And they're most likely not. It's not even competition. It's more adding your voice, adding your perspective, adding
yeah.
what you see, adding your insight. I don't feel that we necessarily need to be tearing each other down as more as we need to lift each other up and encourage each other. That's why I've started a podcast. I'll be putting the first one out next week. It's called the Meet My Network podcast. I've got close to 19,000 followers, close to 19,000 connections. I want to start working with recruiting leaders, getting their stories, specifically finding out how they made that jump from being an individual contributor to a manager and what they think that around recruiting in the future. And also I'm doing it to try to encourage them to start making their own content and creating
Yeah.
their personal brand. I reached out to 650 people and I've had 50 people respond positively to it. Just cold outreach.
Yeah,
Using my automation, a LinkedIn message, like, hey, listen, this is what I'm doing. Are you interested?
nothing ventured, nothing gained. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how my podcast started. Like, I took a list of 3,000 people and I sent an email on a Friday to
Yeah.
3,000 people. And on Monday morning, 300 people said, yeah, I want to come on your podcast. I didn't even have a podcast.
Yeah.
It's like, I was like, oh, that experiment worked too well. 10% of the people replied. And then I'm furiously replying to everyone because I'm like, yeah, I'll book you for this time. Book you for this time. Book you for this time. I did like 60 podcasts in like 40 days. I was like, get them in. But like, it all starts with that first email, you know?
I just wanted to move forward. And then I made a cool logo with it. It's part of Talent Grind. It's my network. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Just who could don't 80% it. Don't be a perfectionist, right? And that's my big growth area. Creation and not being a perfectionist, because being a perfectionist has slowed me down.
In this business, in creating content, if you're trying to be a perfectionist, you'll never get anything done.
Yeah.
Great at
I've
the end of
seen
the
other people and they're dressed very casually. And that's why I just left the sweatshirt on today, because I'm like, one, it's funny because it's fast.
yeah.
And and two, like, it doesn't matter. What we have to say is really what matters.
You shared another article with me that I thought was another disconcerting piece.
Oh yeah,
You're like the harbinger, you're like the grim reaper with articles this week. I was like, oh my God.
there was that unemployment by degrees, the harsh truth about
The Warren Buffett article you sent me,
Warren
like,
Buffett
why
article.
is he hoarding cash kind of thing? And I was like, oh man, like, oh, do I need to read another thing that we're on the cusp of an insane correction? And like, I mean, it basically kind of reaffirms what was in that Atlantic article.
Or maybe I can be a good guide here, because I don't know if I ever told you this, but when the first bubble burst, I worked at the hottest internet company in Chicago.
You mean 2001 or
In
2000?
2001, I had gotten in early. I had like 20,000 shares of the holding company. I had built their whole tech team. I would go to networking events and there would be a line of people waiting to talk to me. I had a poster of a Porsche up in my cubicle, and the president of my area would come by and be like, I can't wait to see you in that car. The company went public right as the internet bubble burst.
Yeah. That's actually an important point to make, by the way. Like, not that you didn't get the chance to buy a Porsche, but more like the point to make, like, there have been multiple cycles of boom and bust. You know
Yep.
what I mean? But like, the point is to be able to like insulate yourself as best as possible and recalibrate yourself as best as possible. Like, how do
Right.
you learn?
Yeah. And what had happened to me then is that people would not hire me because I was a technical recruiter, and that was a new thing. I had spent the next 10 years working at a variety of contracts, trying to get air of support. Within 10
Yeah.
years, I had built every single function within a company so that nobody would ever be able to say that to me again. That's how I adapted the first time. This time I'm adapting with content creation, creating a personal voice, creating a personal brand, making use of all the tools that are now available that weren't available to me back in 2001, right?
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because when I think about 2009, which is when like I came into the workforce, like that was catastrophic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean,
That was right in the middle of the Great Recession, right?
yeah, I finished in 2011, but the European version of that recession went into like 20, the Euro crisis ended in like 2013, I think. So there was still a
Yeah,
couple of years of it left.
right.
And like we didn't have any sort of TARP. Europe was like, let's do austerity. And so like it was the opposite. It was ludicrous. If I think back to where we are today versus then, one of the things I've kind of been thinking about is like the iPhone came out in 2007. It really hit mainstream in like what 2008, 9 when the 3GS came out, the iPhone 3. And when they had ads that were showing this is how you use an app. The ads were describing how the phone works as opposed to now, which are just meta out there kind of things. Everyone remember it was like there's an app for that. Remember that was like their phrase. And like there was this app boom. Everyone was building an app. It was like, what's your apps?
Free apps from Starbucks and these little cards.
Yes. So you got the free apps. Are you building for Android? Are you building for iOS? Like that was an actual conversation people were having back then. Oh my God, your bank doesn't have an app. What is the strategy? I think that's where we are with AI.
Absolutely agree. But this time it's not just engineers who are going to benefit and get rich. We
Exactly.
all can benefit and get rich now.
That is literally what I was going to say. I love that we're so aligned to that. 1,000%. I think everyone can benefit from it this time.
Yeah.
Here's a recession. And like, boy, do we know, like you were in '01, obviously you were in '09 too. I was greedy there for like oh 09 to 13. There was a boom in technology at that time.
Yeah.
Like Twitter and all these companies that started coming up, Market Street in San Francisco, the Mission, those places started coming up with tech companies at the time. I think we're kind of back in that again now with AI. It's just the seeds are kind of germinating a bit now, but the opportunity is there for everyone now.
Become influencers, they'll become celebrities, and then they'll hire people to build the tools and the technology and the platforms that they need to support their communities, right? So community is a moat. I mean, I'll be honest, that's why I'm building Talent Grind, right? Community
Yeah.
is a moat. By the way, I just want to brag a little bit here, Alex, and show you something.
I'm here for it.
I just want to thank everybody who's been supporting Talent Grind and giving us 50% growth over the last month.
Is that 751 followers?
Oh, that's 751 impressions. We're up to 212 followers. So
That's
still
awesome.
very early. But the impression growth has been pretty incredible. And that's just through turning on and scheduling some posts and putting out some content.
So the big
But always think about a brand, right? You've got to have a good brand. I thought about Talent Grind for a long time. I went through a lot of different iterations. I did a lot of work with AI. I talked about it with my wife quite a bit. She's the one who created our logo. So she wanted to look handmade.
Well, tell
Uh,
her thank you for the logo. She did a
huh?
great job.
Yeah,
Tell her
I like
tell her she
it.
did a great
Yeah,
job.
I like it. And then I did everything else with AI. GPT Pro will give you the best images. It takes 15 minutes. You don't have to pay for a designer, right?
We probably should be like, for the community, here's the AI tools to get you started. Like, this is your starter pack.
Put out a post about that, but I think that's a good idea for sure.
Like, I'm sure there are people that would be eager to hear that, but it's like, guys, these tools are free. They're out there.
Yeah,
And like, you don't need a mic like this. You know what I mean? A
absolutely.
long time to cop on. I'd be like, okay, can't use iPod headphones anymore. It took me 100 episodes to get to that point. I was like, get content out there. Prove that you can do this. It's like hitting the gym and losing 20 pounds.
Let's say people don't want to go through all the work and build content for themselves and their own brand and community, then I would say like get involved in a community like Talent Grind, create a relationship with the people who are building the community and build content with them. So I'm going to have a knowledge base, but if people want to add to it, I will let them add to it. I feel the more knowledge that we get out there and share, the better. So find your people once the foam settles and there's more opportunity. I think if you're smart, you're going to focus on building relationships, but you're going to use all these different tools to augment. I keep a database of all the people I've got direct relationships with and the last time that I spoke with them and notes about what we spoke about. I try to go through that once or twice a year and just keep up with people. I actively do that. Very few people do that for me. I'm constantly doing it with other people, right? We all need to start doing that, right? This is a sales thing, it's a recruiting thing, but it's the future of business. It's going to be your network. It's going to be what you can do with it. It's going to be what you can make happen. You can only make things happen if you actually have relationships with people.
I couldn't agree more. Just tying it back to like being a recruiter, you're paid for your relationship access. Like you're going to monetize your ability to mobilize people. Like that's the job.
Yeah.
You're not able to focus on the key factor in that job, which is like the relationship at the core, and everything else is kind of like noise. If you can figure out how to optimize a way to make that even better, then you should be striving to like make that the absolute priority.
Let's say you're an accountant and you're thinking like, well, how does this apply to me? Well, find who the directors of FP&A or audit or tech or reconciliation or whatever at biggest companies that you would love to work for are, and follow them, engage with them online, become part of their network so that they recognize you. That will hopefully help lead to opportunities, or at the very least, they can refer you to other people for opportunities. This is just the new interconnected world that we're in. I think that there's not really the best tools out there that let people visualize and see their networks, which is ultimately kind of what I want to do with my platform, right?
Yeah, I
Right.
like the
Let
spider
people
web.
see the power of their networks and who people could be connected through, who people change and they develop their careers over time, and you're doing your own thing, right? The next thing you know, they're the CRO of a major company and you didn't even realize it.
Oh, I do love seeing a cheeky LinkedIn promotion of like, "Hey, I'm just so thrilled to be this." I'm like, "Oh, good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Where have you been? I haven't spoken to you in ages."
Yeah.
Um, We've been around the block for decades now. I have a very good friend who's in the business of monetizing relationships. He's not a recruiter. He's putting people together with money on one side and needs on the other, and he makes that happen. I couldn't tell you what he does, but he makes an absolute shit ton of money, literally monetizing relationships. And I'm like, he's a skilled, savvy person. You know what I mean? Like, he's able to see how to connect people. And I kind of think like, for a recruiter, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you're just gonna have your pulse on your network.
So even if you don't want to create content, find someone whose content that you like, who's in the position that you want to be in, and try to build a relationship with them. We're all going to improve the world. We're all going to improve business the more that we really start talking with people outside of our companies and our clients and just start talking to more people in general, right?
Yeah.
But there's apps like Lunch Club that you can sign up for. I've missed so many meetings on Lunch Club.
I use that a lot during COVID.
And maybe start getting out and going to events. I'm going to Transform in a couple weeks, so I'm looking forward to doing that. Just so people know, I worked with Claude to come up with a strategy about how to get the most effect out of going to an expensive conference. I dropped this little nugget, Alex, which I'd love to share here. Go to a panel that's in your specialty very early, sit up front and ask a really smart question, because everybody then in the function will see you and associate you with being a peer.
That's clever.
Very clever, right? I've been a recruiter long enough. Like, there's some internal antenna that I have that when someone's giving me a nugget, I listen. I pick up like, oh, that's a nugget. That's somebody did 20, 30,000 repetitions on that, and they've got this figured out. And that was a nugget from somebody who really knew how to work conferences. I'm awful at conferences. I've gotten absolutely zero out of all the conferences I've ever been at. And so I'd like to get better at it.
I mean, I have the opposite experience. I think my conferences, but then I go as a marketer. Like, and in
Yeah.
my head, I'm like, I've got a bunch of salespeople. You guys are closing. How are we going to make sure that we're tracking how well you're closing? What are the events? You're more personable. You're going to the late night drinks, staying out until 2 o'clock in the morning. You're going into that nightclub with that guy, and you're not coming back until you get his business card and an LOI out of that person. What are the events? I think ancillary events for most conferences are where serious value add is. Like, if you can play golf, you're onto a winner, especially in any of the Vegas ones. I'm a big fan of those. But like, it depends. It's like having the strategy. I've done events where I've hired a bunch of kids from universities and had them basically anybody who walks out with a lanyard, I'm like, ask that person for their lanyard. And if you can go in there, I'll give you like the business card. I'll give you $200, somebody who books a demo with us. And so all these kids are excited to be at the conference. They're getting free lanyards. So you're not paying for them to get in. They're running around getting you business cards and you deals. I'm like, cool. Incentivize them. And then you say, I'll give you a MacBook or I'll give you the opportunity for an internship for the winners. There's so many things. I'll tell you one funny thing I did at a conference last year. It was a hospitality conference. And they were like, here's your area, your booth. And I was like, this thing is no more than a cocktail table. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, can I put anything around it? And they were like, no. And I was like, okay. And I was like, but that doesn't mean I can put anything on top. And they were like, you're free to do anything you want with the space. Them not thinking that I would absolutely take advantage of the space. So there was a Kinko's in the basement of the MGM. There was a Kinko's or a FedEx. I'm not even sure which one in Vegas. And I printed out like a 20-foot Drake dapping thing. And I put it on top of the table. This is sort of B2B, like the proven hospitality conference. And everybody came over to our table because they were like, why is there a 20-foot Drake on top of your table? I was like, they never said I couldn't go up. I was like, I'm just going to put something here to grab people's attention. Everyone else is like boring or doing something. I'm like, why do you have Drake? Because you're here now, aren't you? Do you want to? Do you want to? So
I
yeah,
love that.
a lot of it's being creative.
I
Like,
love that. I love that. All right. I think we should probably cut it off. I just want to thank everybody for joining us for Talent Grind Live. Yes, it's bad out there, but it doesn't mean that you don't have the opportunity to work on yourself and make something else happen. I'm Michael Doran with Alex Mann, and we will see you next week.
thank you, everybody.